So today we've been invited by Canon Australia as well as a bunch of other videographers and photographers to test the brand new Canon EOS R, which is Canon's first ever full frame mirrorless camera. We're in the middle of the Woods Farm in Jervis Bay, which is about 3 hours south of Sydney, and we're going to be recording an in-depth review, which is also going to be filmed on a Canon EOS R with a 24 to 105mm f4. Let's get it. So before we get into the first impressions, if you're wondering why my face looks like the moon right now, it's because last week I got 4 of my wisdom teeth removed, so I'm a bit swollen. But let's get into it. First impressions on the EOS R, very decent grip. So it feels really nice in your hand. It feels kind of like a middle level DSLR, so it feels really nice to grip. And in terms of its button layout, it's a bit different. If you notice at the top, there is no mode dial anymore. A way for you to access the mode is by pressing it in, and you can scroll through at the top. And then what you can do on top of that, if you want to switch to video, on the DSLRs, there's normally a switch for you to just flick across, or on a mode dial, you just smash it into video. What you have to do is now is you press mode and you press the info button, and that'll take you into auto video or manual video. On the back, you have a really nice and large articulating tilt and touchscreen. So for people who vlog or for people who like just touching to change their settings, the best thing about this touchscreen is you can basically touch to do everything. You can do touch to shoot, touch to adjust your settings, even in the menu, scrolling through all your camera settings as well as anything else, you can use the touchscreen to touch away and change your settings, which is absolutely brilliant. Like any other Canon camera, there's your info button, your quick menu button, and on the side of the camera, you have one SD card slot, which for some people may not be ideal if they want to use this camera professionally, who benefit from 2 SD card slots, but at least it is an SD card, so it's a lot more accessible. On the left-hand side of the camera, you have a remote port, a mic port, a headphone port, a USB-C port for fast transfer, and a HDMI port. At the bottom of the camera, it uses the standard LPE6 battery. So if you have a current DSLR system which uses LPE6s, you don't have to throw them out and you can use them with this camera. So there are a few things that could be improved in the design aspect of the EOS R. So firstly, the shutter button is really small and it's also really light. So you might find yourself accidentally focusing on things because it's quite easy to press in at times, and there's not really that much feedback back either. On the left-hand side, the on and off switch, there's no kind of like indent or big feature for you to kind of easily turn on and off the camera. It's literally just like a flush circle, so you're gonna have to put a bit more effort into turning off and on your camera. And on the top of the camera as well, the mode dial, a lot of people like quickly swapping between their modes. Unfortunately with this, you do have to go that extra step to go through your mode settings, so for some people that might be a bit annoying. Otherwise, if you are already a Canon user, jumping in straight from Canon, a DSLR or whatever it may be, into the EOS R, it's quite simple. The menu layout is exactly the same and it'll be quite familiar to you. Oh, and last thing I forgot to mention, the EVF in the EOS R is actually pretty good. One, there's enough rubber from it to separate your face from smashing onto the screen, which is really nice. The sensor, when you pull your face in and away, is quite responsive and it doesn't lag too much either. So now I'm just going to run over the key features of the Canon EOS R. So firstly, it's got a similar sensor to the 5D Mark IV with a 30.3 megapixel full frame sensor combined with a brand new Digic 8 image processor. This gives you a native ISO range of 100 to 40,000, a continuous shooting speed of up to 8 frames per second with autofocus lock, and it can shoot 4K video at 30 frames per second. Just a note, that is at a 1.6 times crop factor, and it can shoot full HD up to 60 frames per second. When outputted and recorded externally via HDMI, it can record at 10-bit 422 color sampling And inbuilt in the camera without an external recorder, you can already record C-Log, which is absolutely fantastic. To top it off, it's got a dual pixel AF system, which is similar to any other Canon camera, which means that you're going to get consistent, reliable autofocus performance. And this is really good for people who want to vlog as well, because it has some facial detection features, which works absolutely amazing. Furthermore, on the autofocus, it has a dense network of 5,655 phase detection points, which is really good for tracking and low light performance, being able to focus up to -6 EV. And this works well as well when using the EF adapter on the EOS R. The body is made out of magnesium alloy, making it completely weather sealed, and it's got your typical wireless function, so you can connect straight to your smartphone to transfer and control your camera from your smartphone. And finally, although the EOS R does not have in-body image stabilization, most of the lenses are image stabilized, and it does have a digital stabilization mode for you to use a video with 2 levels. We recommend you to use this for forwards and backwards movements, but not so for panning. Am I Drake yet? So right now we're testing the vlogging features of it. The autofocus tracking is working really well. It's tracking our faces
Pretty nicely.
It's really cool.
And you're listening to the internal microphones. I think there's 2 at the front, so you should be hearing us quite well. It's not that loud out here. And we have the stabilization on, so it is cropped in a little bit, but it does look pretty smooth.
And we've also got the 16 to 35mm f2.8 attached onto the adapter of the camera as well. So the autofocus is working really well. We're quite impressed. So now just going to give my overall impressions on its performance as well as just general usage of the camera. So in terms of photography, the autofocus on it is absolutely fantastic. It is super quick, and even in lower light conditions, it still focuses well. With the adapter as well, it focuses quite quick too, and it really doesn't feel like there's any lag to it. Canon claimed that it can focus as fast as 0.05 seconds. Didn't really test that, but overall it was quite solid, and honestly one of the best adapter uses we've had on a mirrorless system. In terms of the usage, what I really love about the brand new Canon EOS R system and just the all-round RF system is that it has a control ring, and this control ring is basically customizable for whatever you want. At the moment, I've got it set as an ISO range. So when I'm shooting, I can have my aperture and shutter speed on camera, but best of all, I can also adjust my ISO on the fly without going to a menu, which is fantastic. On top of that, in terms of the actual touch bar, initially I didn't really like the touch bar. It's something that I thought was a bit gimmicky, but honestly, after learning how to use it, it's quite handy. For photography, you can set each of them to kind of like magnify, so you can have a look at whether you're going to be in pinpoint focus or not, or you can basically adjust the touch bar to do whatever, whether it be to change ISO, white balance. It's quite simple to do. The only thing I have in terms of feedback for the touch bar, to activate it at the moment, you have to hold down left to turn it on and off. I wish there was just a button for you to activate in the center that would just activate the touch bar for you to use and deactivate, but holding it on the left, although it isn't really anything too hard to do, it's just a bit weird that you've got to hold down the left side of it to get to activate. Another thing, a lot of people are complaining it doesn't have an autofocus joystick, and initially this was something that I really wish it had. But I've discovered it has touch and drag, so if you are familiar with the Panasonic Lumix system, where you can basically put your eye up against the EVF and then drag your thumb to change the autofocus points, you can do that in the EOS R. So that's actually really easy to do. And you can also adjust the autofocus point via the D-pad as well. And lastly, I'm going to quickly touch on the battery life on the EOS R, which isn't too bad. So Josh has been filming at 1080 for about 2 hours, and he's gone down to 50% battery. And personally myself, I've been shooting about 160 or so shots, and I've been shooting burst mode as well as high ISOs as well. And I've only lost 1 bar of battery, and we've both had our live views on constantly. So for you to maximize the battery life, what I recommend is, because you have an EVF at the top, you can change your back screen to what is familiar to a lot of DSLR users of Canon, and that's just your quick settings screen, and that will maximize your battery life a lot further.
For videographers, first thing I noticed about the camera when shooting for video is the location of the record button. It is set back a little further from the shutter button, so you will have to adjust your grip when shooting video. I already checked, you can't program the shutter button to shoot video, unfortunately. Secondly, when you flip around the screen, when I was going to shoot a low angle for video, I noticed that when I had my headphones plugged in, the screen actually hits it, so you will have to flip it around prior to extending it fully. In terms of the internals of the camera, it does not have slow motion, unfortunately. It does have 1080p up to 60 frames per second, but it doesn't have any 100 frames or 120. Some things I do like about the camera, however, is first off, it does have C-Log built in, so we shoot on the Canon C200, so matching up these cameras will be perfect, as well as it does have really, really good autofocus. One thing you have to get used to on the EOS R is the touchpad. This is something new that hasn't been in cameras before, but one thing I do like about it is that it does have the ability to customize for audio levels. This is fantastic. When you're recording a video, you can easily swipe left or right to increase or decrease your audio levels, as well as you can hit either side of them to be another customizable button.
So one cool thing that we've noticed about the brand new video screen on the EOS R, so like the standard quick setting screens on the DSLRs, there's actually a separate one for video now, which comes up with your autofocus, comes up with your levels as well, and what frame rates you're shooting at. And on top of that, you can use the quick menu to adjust any of these, either by touch or really quickly through the D-pad, which is really neat. Today's sample images were shot with a Canon EOS R and a 24 to 105mm f4 RF and a 50mm 1.2 RF lens. In terms of noise, shots are super clean at high ISOs, which is quite impressive for a 30 megapixel sensor and really shows off how great the EOS R is at low light. Each photo comes out with a lovely amount of color and high levels of detail. Dynamic range wise, we had the camera a bit too early, so there wasn't software to read our RAW files. However, there was enough to move around with in JPEG, and we're going to assume that the RAW files would be amazing too, if it's anything based off the 5D4 sensor. Nothing to complain here, as the images are top notch. In terms of video quality, despite not having in-body image stabilization, the lens plus digital stabilization work well. Just a note, if you are going to be using digital stabilization, there is a bit of crop to it. C-Log does look soft at the back of the screen, and that's due to desaturation and decontrast as with any other log file. However, it does give you enough flexibility you need in post to work with in terms of color grading, as well as recovering highlights and shadows. Video quality is great with nice detail and smoothness. However, we do wish that we had a bit more flexibility in frame rates and that the 4K is uncropped. Overall, this is a solid camera from Canon, and is great for anyone looking for a hybrid solution that is lightweight, that gives out great quality. So my final thoughts on the Canon EOS R. If you're looking for a camera that's dedicated to video, then the EOS R may not be ideal. If you are a person who wants a hybrid camera that's great for photos and video, or for a person who likes to vlog, then the EOS R is perfect. The colors from the video look amazing, the quality from the video is amazing, and although the 4K has a bit of crop and there's no in-body image stabilization, overall the user experience on the Canon EOS R for video is pretty good. On top of that, for photography, the Canon EOS R is amazing, and there's not really much for me to complain on the actual camera itself. The touchpad, although it's a bit gimmicky, if you are an avid user of Tinder, you will appreciate that swiping right and swiping left gives you a whole plethora of controls in your camera. And the fact that the camera is fully customizable, like you can change basically any of the buttons on the camera to do whatever you want, whether it be to change ISO, white balance, even change which button shoots the photo is pretty cool. And the fact that the menu system is identical to any other Canon EOS system makes it really easy to navigate in. There is just a bit of a learning curve in terms of where the position is, the brand new mode dial, and how to operate the actual touchpad. But overall, image quality is great, and really the EOS R is a big step for Canon in the full frame mirrorless world. What I really like most about this EOS R system, and basically the RF mount system, is the actual lenses. The lenses are brilliant, they're super sharp, autofocus is really quick, and even with the adapter, it's fantastic as well. Stay tuned for our next video as we're going to be reviewing the Canon 50mm 1.2L RF mount, which is notably Canon's sharpest lens. But we're going to see in our next video. In the meantime, if you have any questions on the EOS R, pop them in the comments below. Make sure to follow us on our Facebook, Instagram, and our blog. Links to those are in our description below. And as always, if you enjoyed our video, make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button so you don't miss out on our Canon 50mm review and any other updates we do in the future as we upload every Tuesday and Thursday.
What camera is this?